This is Arab Talk on KPOO 89.5 FM in San Francisco. This is Arab Talk with Jess and Jamal, and I'm Jess Nam.
And I'm Jamal Dejani.
Well, Jamal, we're broadcasting today from what turns out to be among the darkest weeks in U.S. history. We are 1 week out from arguably one of the darkest moments in our history of an insurrection, and in my humble opinion, a coup d'etat that was instigated and lit by the President of the United States, in which thousands of white supremacists stormed the U.S. Capitol, destroyed property, murdered people, and attempted to disrupt the duly elected process of getting the next president of the United States installed. And at the same time, and within the context of the same week, Jamal, we are entering an extremely dark period of time with the coronavirus, with more than 4,000 Americans dying every day from the virus. And unfortunately, it's going to get worse before it gets better. So against that backdrop, Jamal, I think we have a lot to talk about today. We have an inauguration that is taking place next Wednesday, where there will be 20 to 40,000 armed National Guard people in and around Washington, D.C. D.C. is on lockdown leading up to that event. It's a pretty dark period of time in our history.
It sure is, Jess, and you've mentioned it. If you look at the images of Washington, D.C. around Capitol, we have more National Guards and police and other security agencies than we had in the aftermath of 9/11. It's a total war zone. I'm sure a lot of our viewers have by now watched all these images right in the Capitol, National Guardsmen and women, sleeping on the floor because they have to be guarding that area 24/7. So they're taking arrests. They haven't set up for them camps.
That's right.
And our reporter from Washington, D.C., Phil Pasquini, has been sending me images. It is horrific.
Yeah.
As you know, I lived in Washington, D.C. for almost 4 years. This is not the Washington, D.C. I knew. And actually, even when I went there, I recall my first trip to Washington, D.C., there was a time when you could drive your car on Pennsylvania Avenue, just right in front of the White House, and take a photo. And then you got pushed back. And now, and then you used to go to, I used to go to all these different buildings on the Hill, just the normal metal detector as you go through the front door. I can't imagine what is it going to be like now meeting with your representative there. It's difficult as it is to make an appointment, but to go through all these different security checks. So the one thing I wanted to say, because last week we spoke about the events. We were kind of like speaking as they were unfolding on our last show.
Right.
And now we're finding out, because you were talking that this was a coup d'etat, and I said, well, I don't know if this is... But now we're finding out that this was unorganized. There were organizers. It didn't happen just casually. This was organized.
It was organized?
The FBI now is arresting people as we're speaking.
Right.
They're talking there now. There are other images and videos coming out. People giving instructions where to meet, what congressman or congresswoman's office to go to. They had the layout of the Capitol. There were, as you know, there are offices that you and I don't know, they're unmarked offices. They knew exactly where these senators and congressmen were going to be at. And they had a plan. They had a plan to take over the building. And when you have a plan to take over the seat of the government, that's a coup d'etat. You're absolutely right.
That's right, Jamal. It was a coup d'etat. And what makes it even worse, everything you're saying is exactly right. But we're getting even more information now suggesting that... it's even worse than that, because just within the last 24 hours, there's a congresswoman, Mikey Schiffel, who basically is saying that she witnessed the week prior that some Republican congresspeople were giving reconnaissance tours to people, even during the pandemic, the same people that were involved in the storming of the Capitol. So it looks like there were not only planned and organized, and the flame was lit by Donald Trump, but at the same time, it looks like potentially, I mean, we still have to get the data, the information to confirm it, that there may have been a handful of congresspeople, men and women, who were giving tours to these saboteurs, to these seditionists, to these white supremacists, giving them reconnaissance to be able to engage in this horrible act of sedition and a coup d'etat. And it looks like there were also some Capitol Police, some of whom have been fired, some of whom have been put on leave, who may have wittingly or unwittingly participated. Some of the Capitol Police took selfies. Some of them even opened up the gates to let them in. I think, Jamal, as time goes on, as we all deal with the trauma of having a coup d'etat attempt on the U.S. Government, that this story is only going to get worse. It's only going to get darker. And things that you and I have been talking about for many years now about, terrorism. The biggest terrorist threat to this country, Jamal, is not coming from Al-Qaeda or ISIS. The biggest terrorist threat to the U.S. government is actually white supremacists within the country.
You're absolutely right. We're going to talk about this, but I want to add a couple of things. There was also a report from at least one congresswoman who recently discovered that the panic button that they put for them to alert the police was disconnected. So we'll find out more about this, how many of these officers were actually, infiltrated. The other thing, Jess, we were talking about the incitement. Of course, we were talking about the incitement done by Donald Trump, but then you have a whole lineup of members of Congress and the Senate and other politicians and Trumpsters and the media. So I wanted to play here, even though this is a clip from the satirical show, The Daily Show. It's a compilation of all these agitators who were egging on the protesters, really, to go to the Capitol. Let's watch.
General George Washington's soldiers were freezing cold, fighting for independence against tyranny, domination, and control. It was their moment to stand up and fight for freedom. To many, January 6th is such a moment.
The battle for the White House is now a full-fledged struggle for the survival of this constitutional republic.
We, the people, are in control of the United States, and we will take our rights back.
74 million Americans are not going to shut up.
This is about taking a stand where you can take a stand.
We need to fight back. We win because of our ideas. We lose elections because they cheat us.
We're going to keep fighting until every illegal vote is thrown out.
They rigged the election in front of all of us, and nobody did anything about it.
Call your congressman and feel free. You can lightly threaten them. If you don't start supporting election integrity, I'm coming after you. Madison Cawthorn's coming after you. Everybody's coming after you.
We're not timid folk. We're people who understand when there's a challenge in front of us, we rise to the challenge. We fight, finish, keep.
It is time to stand and fight. The swamp isn't truly drained until we've nailed the hides of the alligators to the wall.
We need to fight back. We need to strike at the heart of their power. We need to show that the next revolution is just getting started.
The ruling would be that you got to go to the streets and be as violent as Antifa and BLM.
Will we stand up for freedom as Samuel Adams and his fellow patriots did?
If we don't fight on January 6th on the floor of the Senate and the House, that is the joint meeting of Congress, on these electors, we're done. It's time for everybody to stand up and be heard.
President Trump won this election, so everyone who's listening, do not be quiet. We cannot allow this to happen before our very eyes.
Liberty-loving patriots that will not let them steal this election.
retribution.
We have to fight this out for the American people.
This is our 1776 moment.
Get it right. They stole it. We need to take it back for the people.
It's time for conservatives to show that backbone.
Republicans, grow a backbone and fight. We are in this fight to the bitter end. We are going to take our country back.
We need to march on the Capitol today, and we need to stand up for this country.
We're fighting for the future of this country.
We're going to keep fighting. I implore you to keep fighting too.
Freedom isn't cheap, but you know what? Imagine this. That you get to go back home once we conquer the hill.
Patriots here ready to fight, certainly have the back of the president.
If you're going to be the zero and not the hero, we're coming for you, and we're going to have a good time doing it. Don't be suppressed. Don't be put in your corner.
We will not go quietly into the night. We will defend liberty.
Today is the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass.
Let's have trial by combat.
They're not taking this White House. We're going to fight like hell, I'll tell you right now. We're going to the Capitol. You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and we're going to have to fight much harder. We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
That's so disturbing, Jamal. I don't even know where to begin. And you know, as I continue to think about all this stuff, those agitators, you know, when you think about Senator Josh Hawley, for example, you know, raising his fist to the protesters, when you think about Ted Cruz and Kevin McCarthy and Boebert and some of these other Congress people, men and women, who are fomenting a takeover of their own government, how are we going to leave them out of the system of accountability? Yes, you know, the FBI has arrested hundreds of people so far, but there were thousands of people there. There were people, congresswomen and senators, congressmen and women and senators who also participated. What are we to do with the leadership, which I include not just Donald Trump, but some of these people that we just witnessed?
Exactly. And they're trying to walk back what they have been saying. I mean, you hear them now, they try to, whenever they get interviewed, the first thing they start their interview, we're against violence. You know, we condemn the violence, blah, blah, blah. But then you have all these video clips of them, the way they were addressing people to march on the Capitol, to stop the inauguration of Joe Biden, to prevent the confirmation of the count, and so forth. It just like when they say words hurt, and this is a true interpretation of really very, I would say, toxic type of words that they were spewing.
That's absolutely right, Jamal. It was toxic. It was inflammatory. And how ironic is it, Jamal, that you have the same people who were inciting violence and sedition now in the second impeachment of Donald Trump. And we'll come to that in a little bit, because he's been impeached now for a second time, the only president in U.S. history to be impeached twice. These are the same people who are calling for unity right now. The people who have been divisive, who have been striking a wedge between people, who have been calling for, all this aggressive political and legal attempts to kind of undermine communities of color and attacking people of color and, thwarting voters' rights, are now saying, oh, we now want to unify the country. You shouldn't impeach Donald Trump. The hypocrisy and the doublespeak is beyond comprehension at this point. What I would say to them, Jamal, yes, we want unity. But before unity, you need accountability.
Exactly.
So we need accountability. Once we hold people accountable for illegal, treasonous, seditious acts, then we can begin the process of unity, Jamal. But I'm afraid that this is just so much more than just a couple of hundred people that the FBI has arrested right now.
No. This country is put on high alert, and we are not talking about Washington, D.C. There are plans to storm, the governor seats in multiple states.
Well, 50 states, actually.
Yeah.
Frankly,
I mean, I don't know if it's 50 states, but maybe you have more information.
Yeah.
So this is a threat. There are people who have been plotting. I mean, this is something that doesn't happen overnight. It means this has plotters, conspirators working on all these things. And let's call a spade a spade. This is white supremacy terrorism. This is what we're having in this country. And as you started by saying that this is, actually, you don't have to say it, just the FBI says that this is the biggest threat in this country is the threat from white supremacists. We are no longer talking about Al-Qaeda, even though some now people have been comparing Donald Trump to bin Laden, not us, but some people have been making that connection. But think about if you have been one of those people on the no-fly list because your name is Muhammad in this country, living in this country in fear.
Right.
And now you're thinking about, well, the people who are being added to the no-fly list are white supremacists. These are the ones. And all these years you have been, scared unjustifiably because you have been profiled. And the true threat in this country are these white supremacists.
But unfortunately, Jamal, I still think the bulk of this country is in a lot of denial about this. I'm not even talking about the Republican Party, who I believe the majority of whom are still in denial. 80% of Republicans still believe that Donald Trump's speech and his behavior leading up to the coup d'etat was perfectly fine and legal. That's 80% of Republicans believe it still. We as a country are still in deep denial about the imminent, and I mean that sincerely, imminent threat of danger from these white supremacists. And it is 50 state capitals, Jamal. The FBI did put out a warning to the governors of all 50 states saying that there are active plans in all 50 states, at various levels of development, to storm the Capitol with arms. And I don't think this is really sinking in to the majority of our of the people of the United States. We are in a very critical time period. And to speak of delusion, Jamal, people are still in this delusional state. Things are going to be better after January 20th. It doesn't matter that Donald Trump is not on Twitter. It doesn't matter that he's not on Facebook or YouTube or whatever. We are talking about a threat to this country from within that is going to go beyond January 20th. And so that's why the impeachment process, which he was impeached yesterday, and now it has to go to the Senate, and will go under the Senate under the Biden administration. They have to take the steps to convict him so that he will never run for office again. And all of these thousands...
Well, there is a big question mark. I'm glad you mentioned this because, as you know, impeachment is a two-part process. A lot of people are confused about impeachment. So the House introduces and passes the articles of impeachment, but it's the Senate is where the person is being impeached faces trial.
That's
and
correct.
The punishment, right? But there's a confusion here because, the Senate is not going to meet till after the 20th. It's not going to happen before the 20th.
That's correct.
And Donald Trump will be no longer a president. So there is a kind of a constitutional question because what's the point of holding an impeachment trial for a former president?
It's called
accountability. There is a precedent.
Yeah.
I was looking at it. There is a precedent for impeachment former officials,
right?
And it's called late impeachment,
right?
And while the main penalty for a guilty verdict in an impeachment trial is removal from office, I mean that's usually the main. Senators could vote to bar Trump from holding office in the future, right?
That's the whole point. That's the whole point, Jamal.
He also could lose his six-figure pension.
He could lose
and post-presidential perks.
Airplanes.
So he could
everything.
He could lose that. I don't know if they'll still provide him with security, like Secret Service to him and his family. But but the conviction requires 2/3 majority. So if you have all the 100 senators, you need at least 67 senators
Well, you have two senators.
To
you have
convict,
two Republicans right now who are indicating that they would probably, that's Toomey and Sass, I believe. And in a rather surprising development this week, Jamal, Mitch McConnell, the Grinch of the Senate, has announced that he hasn't decided if he will actively work against convicting Donald Trump. I mean, he's sending a signal to Donald Trump and the rest of the Republican senators that he is fed up, and that he's leaving open the option that senators can vote their conscience rather than being squeezed by McConnell, as they were last time, to vote against it. I think McConnell, because his life was in danger, I mean, people don't realize, Jamal.
Everyone's life was in danger.
But Jamal, there was 60 seconds away from storming the Senate chamber and the House from taking hostages. There was a noose. There were people with zip ties. They were planning on arresting, convicting, and possibly harming and killing elected officials. That's how close it was. They defaced the ultimate symbol of U.S. Democracy, the Capitol. And I think even Mitch McConnell, who is odious in so many ways and has done really big damage to the judicial arm of the government by getting so many, Supreme Court justices through that are, extremely conservative and judges throughout the system. Even Mitch McConnell, I think, is open to the idea of impeaching and convicting Donald Trump.
Well, I'm glad to see him getting impeached for the second time. I don't know how I feel about dragging the country and the Senate because into trying to convict him, because that could drag on for months, if not years, because the number one priority should be restoring order. I'd like to see the FBI, Homeland Security, wherever, cracking down on all these agitators, cracking down on all these terrorists, making sure we can restore some security back to this country. And then we have to deal with, like for Biden, he has to deal with the budget, the stimulus. He wants to increase the stimulus checks to $2,000. So that has to go to the Senate. And the big elephant in the room is COVID. We are not out. So if you get them all, I don't want to tell you the truth, I want it to be on January 21st that I forget the names, kind of like from the name of Donald Trump, the whole Trump family. I don't want to hear about them.
I'm sorry.
Like, I'm just happy. Like January 21st is kind of like one of those movies. You wake up and your memory is erased about anything with the name Trump on it.
But there's another movie metaphor or analogy to use, Jamal, and that's Groundhog Day. And I just want to urge...
That's what I don't want to see.
Well, I want to... Unfortunately, I believe that on the 21st, when we all wake up, Donald Trump will still be around. 75 million people who voted for Donald Trump will still be around. And you will still have thousands, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of white supremacists who do not believe, and this is the issue, Jamal, we have millions of people who do not believe that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the legitimate president and vice president of the United States.
That's their prerogative. That's fine. This is democracy. As long as they express their dissatisfaction peacefully, that's fine. They don't have to accept it. They didn't have to vote for Joe Biden. They didn't have to vote at all. They don't have to be, as long as you eliminate the violent element, and that's what I'm hoping that the FBI is going to do.
And the other thing, optimistic.
And the other thing is, we forget to mention that Donald Trump now cannot use Twitter, he cannot use Instagram, he cannot use YouTube, he cannot use Facebook. And this Parler, which I've never visited, this right-wing, whatever, crazy platform,
is shut down.
So unless he wants to put his money, if he actually has the money, because he's going to be also, there are going to be legal lawsuits on the civil level, state level, from New York and onward, because he was talking about, he was to launch his own platform and other people. I think it's all nonsense. Since he's been now going to be taken, he's been basically haven't been hearing a lot from him. The only he recorded you could see him a written statement that he was reading off the teleprompter.
It looked like a hostage video, Jamal.
Yeah, and they had to use the White House Twitter. He couldn't use his Twitter account, for people to see it, and you could see the difference.
But it didn't look like he was really believing what he was saying.
I don't care, but I'm just showing you that he had zero impact.
Right.
Because he lost his access to the millions of followers on Twitter, Facebook, and what have you. And he's just like, exactly, he looked like a puppet. Like he just parroting, or I should say like a parrot. He was parroting whatever his aides had written for him, because that wasn't the Donald Trump, the arrogant Donald Trump that we are used to seeing.
Right. And so, just in terms of immediate impact on Donald Trump's financial status, Jamal, the city and the state of New York have gone forward with terminating contracts with the Trump organization. Trump hotel properties are facing, financial collapse. The PGA has announced that they're withdrawing a tournament from Trump's Bedminster golf course resort. So and Deutsche Bank also announced that they're going to refuse to do any business or loan him any more money. So
know what this reminds me of? Just came to my mind. Have you watched the film Trading Places?
Yeah.
Okay, that was pretty funny. I think the worst thing that you can do to Donald Trump is rendering him broke. I don't wish him any ill, like whatever. He can go away, but the worst thing, by shutting down the Trump organization, by not going to patronize his hotels and buildings and what have you, by losing money to all these people who are going now to come out and sue him. He still has tens of lawsuits hanging there. Right. And then we find out the true kind of net worth, because, he always has exaggerated. He's not a stranger to filing bankruptcy. He filed bankruptcy and he managed, of course, to finagle his way back on top. But I think this time he's going to get caught. And the worst punishment for him is let him live as a common American, let him just be, and see how he's going to survive.
Let him collect unemployment benefits like the rest of us. I see your point, Jamal, about why you don't want to ever hear about Donald Trump ever again. But I think there's a larger issue of accountability, because, if you look at when Black Lives Matter, when that protest movement went to Lafayette Park in front of the White House, it was met with tear gas batons, semi-automatic rifles. People were shut down, were beaten, were arrested. It was a very grotesque use of military power to stamp out a protest. We need accountability at the highest levels, and not just the president, Jamal. What about Jared Kushner? What about Ivanka Trump? What about Rudy Giuliani? What about Ted Cruz? What about Josh Hawley?
You just remind me of Rudy Giuliani. Now Trump is saying don't pay. That actually made my day. That Trump doesn't want to pay him.
Right.
Jess, would you have Rudy Giuliani represent you for a jaywalking ticket? I wouldn't.
I wouldn't have Rudy Giuliani represent me for anything, Jamal. And I think that's where the accountability has to start. Giuliani incited treasonous, seditious behavior. Also, I know in New York there's a complaint against him in the New York Bar Association. They're attempting to take away his legal license.
Which they would.
Which they would. But there has to be a process. As I said at the beginning of the show, Jamal, if you want unity in this country, if you want us to come together as an entire nation, there has to be accountability. You can't let lawlessness and this kind of behavior go without accountability, and the accountability has to come from the justice system.
We have few minutes on this topic because we have an interview with a filmmaker.
Right.
Okay, so Donald Trump, let's say, is out of the picture. You say he's not going to be totally out of the picture.
He's not.
The FBI rounds up all the heads of these terror cells. That's how I look at them.
Right.
We still have 75 million people who voted for Donald Trump, and we still have a big white supremacist movement that has been percolating in this country for many years that Donald Trump brought back to the surface. What are we going to do about this? I mean, again, the big threat is how are we going to bridge, after more than 200 years since this country was established, that there are still people who view black and brown people as inferior.
Jamal, I think that is, without question, the most important issue for this country to address. And I know that we've both been saying this for many years, but unless this country confronts in a very direct way the original sin that this country was founded on slavery and ethnic cleansing, unless we confront that in a systemic and systematic way and come to terms with it, there can never be any healing or unity or accountability. So I'll just put that out there first. Second, when you think about what happened after 9/11 and the trillions and trillions of dollars, and I mean that, Jamal, trillions and trillions of dollars were spent in an attempt to kind of stop what people referred to as radical Islamic terrorism. That's what they called it. We need to invest trillions of dollars to confront, from a judicial point of view, this cancer of white supremacy and domestic terrorism. We need to take and confront that and take the resources of this government and confront it in the same way that we did after 9/11. It's a bigger problem. It's a more serious problem because it's linked to, white supremacy is linked to guns and the Second Amendment. And surprise, surprise, Jamal, after the coup d'etat attempt on Wednesday, gun sales and ammunition sales went through the roof yet again. So we're in it for the long haul. I'm going to keep saying it for many years now. Accountability. Jamal, think about what if a brown or a black person did the same thing. Not only would they be in jail now, but they would be up for the death penalty at this point.
They would have been shot at the steps.
They might have even been shot on the steps, exactly.
They wouldn't have made it inside. I mean, this is the crazy thing about it. Well, on the good news, I've been watching all these jokers, terrorists, whatever you want to call them, getting arrested within the past couple of days, which is really good. This is thank God to security cameras, and they were taking their own selfies and whatever. The guy with the horn, he has been arrested. The person who sat on Nancy Pelosi's desk, he got arrested.
The Camp Auschwitz guy got arrested.
Camp Auschwitz guy, he got, so they're doing a good job of locating. And then when I look at them, how far they had driven or they flown, coming all the way from Nevada, coming all the way from Texas, coming all the way from Florida. I mean, we are not talking about just people coming from Virginia who used to descend on the Capitol. They're coming from all over the country. Right. And I'm so happy. And there were some funny things actually where people were prevented from boarding planes. They were already on the no-fly list.
Nice.
And they were just having a fit.
Nice.
So there is a lot of things maybe mainstream media doesn't show you, but you could go on the internet and look at all actually the quick, basically, hand of justice, I would say, that is striking these people and sending a strong message.
As it should, Jamal. But here's the other side to that. When all is said and done, the another aspect to this tragedy are the number of police officers, active duty police officers that were involved in this.
Sadly, some firemen or ex-firemen.
Policemen, and former military people. So this cancer that we have failed to confront in our country about racism and white supremacy and domestic white terrorism. I keep saying this, it's so much worse than we've ever imagined, and it's going to take the full force of government and the state
and education.
And education.
It starts with the young. I mean, here we are after the Civil War has ended.
It hasn't.
After the civil, well, I'm just saying the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement of the 60s, Martin Luther King and etc. And we still are battling racism and white supremacy in this country.
That's right, Jamal. And unfortunately, thanks to Andrew Johnson's hand after Abraham Lincoln, was assassinated and Andrew Johnson took over from vice president to president, when he took out Union troops after, there was an attempt at reconstruction and healing this country, it led to the undoing of all the great work that Lincoln attempted to do to heal this country from the stain of slavery and civil war. And we see that stain, that horrific event that killed so many people and did so much damage to this country, that wound hasn't even been close to being healed yet.
You're listening to Arab Talk on KPO San Francisco 89.5 FM. We're moving to our next segment, Jess. I had actually, the pleasure to watch a movie recently. It's called The Dead of Jaffa. And I spoke to the filmmaker, Ram Loevy, who basically, this is his latest film. He has been making films since the 60s.
Wow.
About this great film that talks about Palestinian family with Israeli citizenship living in Jaffa and their challenges because they've had basically two young visitors from the West Bank. I don't want to give up the plot, but what I'm going to tell our listeners and viewers is that this film is now being streamed for free on linktv.org.
Wow.
Let's watch the interview. Joining Arab Talk from Ramat Gan in Israel, director Ram Loevy, to discuss his latest film, The Dead of Jaffa. Welcome to Arab Talk, Ram.
Thank you.
Just briefly to our audience, just want to let our audience know a little bit about Ram Loevy. He started his career in 1966 with the documentary My Name is Ahmad, which shocked Israeli audience by putting a disposed Palestinian at the center of his narrative. His 1978 television film, Khirbet Khize, portrayed the expulsion of Palestinians by Israeli troops in 1948 and questioned the morality of Israel's actions. First, it was censored in Israel, then it became a major subject of debate. Your latest film, Ram, The Dead of Jaffa, also touches on these complicated subjects. So first, please tell us what the film is all about and what prompted you to make it.
Well, what made me make the film is something which made me make all my films, or most of my films. It has to do with the Jewish-Arab conflict, which is an endless subject, which is part of our hidden or obvious or open subject of our life. And I feel that for the audience, Israeli audience, I need to show the human side of the Arabs, and it's therefore I'm doing these films, and I hope it gets to them.
Well, I watched the film. It's actually gives a very good picture and then actually gives a reality check, even though this is not a documentary. This is a fictional story. Tell us a little bit about it. I mean, I know it's like the main characters, 3 children from the West Bank were smuggled into Israel arriving at the doorstep of George and Rita's house in Jaffa. I mean, and then you take it from there. So what's the message, the hidden message in that film?
There's no hidden message. The messages are open, and it's mainly human. It's telling the stories of human being in the middle of the conflict. And there are two subjects. The main subject is, as you could see, the subject of the 3 children from the West Bank coming to Jaffa, trying to get refuge after the mother died and the father is in jail. And the way they are treated, or being part of the household of Rita and George, George being a grocer in Jaffa, and Rita and George don't have children. So in a way, it's very dangerous for them to hide Palestinian. On the other hand, for Rita, it's a very big joy having children after they didn't have children before. This is a main plot. The other plot is a story of a director, a British director, who makes a film about his parents in 1947. They both were working in the British Army during the 1947 in the British occupation of Palestine. And this love story, or this love story, is the other subject of the film. And both of the subject and the other subject are treated in the film together.
Yeah, it's multiple subjects really interwoven together. It makes a very beautiful story, because part of it is, it's about these people becoming characters or actors in a film that is being made in Jaffa. Now, I mean, this is a little bit different than your other films, which were really kind of shocking to the Israeli public. The topics that you discussed in your earlier films, Palestinian expulsion, where the Palestinian called the Nakba, injustice, occupation, were tabooed. People weren't talking about it. Now, everybody's talking about it. Now, I read every day. I read Haaretz, I read Ma'arif, Videot, wherever. I try to get the news. Everybody's discussing this openly, yet things have gotten worse. Instead of things becoming better, even though everybody is aware of these things, they've gotten worse. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, you've been working for decades to kind of portray or connect the societies basically through film and shed light on the reality, but it hasn't improved.
It hasn't improved, and I'm not sure if films can really improve the situation. I can try, but we are not really able to change the situation, although gradually we hope we are doing something. People are listening to us more than they listened before. See, Bibi, for his own interest, started talking to the Arab population as if they are human beings, which he didn't do before. Gradually, things are better understood by the Israeli Jewish public than they were understood before. It still is far away from what I would have liked it to be, but it's some step forward towards understanding the Arabs. And I believe that in the film you can see also the subject which is hidden usually in Israeli public, and this is the Nakba. The fact that Palestinians were either expelled or ran away, but were part of the Palestinian population, of the bigger part, and they are now refugees. Most of them are refugees. And this is a subject which was hidden, or still is trying, the Israeli establishment tries to shut it up, not to talk about it.
Well, it's even, more than this. Just on Monday, the largest Israeli human rights organization, B'Tselem, issued a statement basically saying Israel is now apartheid. I mean, and I'm reading from their statement from the Bet Salem. They said Israel is not a democracy that has a temporary occupation attached to it. It is one regime from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, and we must look at the full picture and see it for what it is, apartheid. This is you're familiar with Bet Salem, right?
Yes, sure.
Because again, I go back to your film, is making that connections between Palestinians and Israelis and Palestinians from the West Bank coming to Jaffa and wherever, and then you have this largest organization, human rights organization, and saying the reality on the ground is not what you really see in the news. And we've now crossed the threshold. It's no longer about occupier and occupation, but it's more an apartheid. Do you see it this way, or you differ from that?
There are points of apartheid, of course, in Israeli behavior towards the Palestinians. Still, Israel is some kind of a democracy, despite of that. And therefore, for instance, I can make the film. Such a film and some of other films which I made were made by Israeli public money, most of it. Although this film was also financed by my family and friends, but mainly the Israeli public paid for it. The governmental money paid for it, which is, I think, a very big step forward. Not because I made the film, but because it says talks about the tendency to do things which were not done before.
How was its reception in Israel? I know the film was first shown at the Jerusalem Festival in 2019. And how did the Israeli view it when you showed it?
The Israeli public, the Israeli critics were very hopeful, very happy about the film, and they wrote very nice critics about it. Many of them. The public was split into two. The people who don't really understand the reason why I'm working on the subject, making so many films on the subject. And they think we have our own problems to talk about. And some people which were hugging me and they were very happy to see the film and to understand what I'm talking about, because they understand it much more than they did understand before.
Did you have the opportunity to show it in the West Bank, in Ramallah, or where you have a Palestinian audience?
Israeli Palestinians did see the film before the coronavirus started. But I hope to show the film in the West Bank after the coronavirus will leave us.
Well, we hope that people can watch the film, because I just want to tell our audience right here in San Francisco and in the United States, your film, the film is The Dead of Jaffa. It's now being streamed on Link TV. So if you go to our listeners and viewers, if you go to linktv.org, and you can actually watch it. And I know in the United States that's been streamed in the United States. I don't know if there are any restrictions for people to watch it from Israel on Link TV or from the West Bank, but they can actually now, because you have that streaming power and because everybody now is in lockdown, they can watch it at home, right?
Right, of course. And I miss the situation of audience in a cinema, because this is different kind of looking at films when you see it together with the audience, who sometimes, by the way, laughs because there are elements of absurd in the film, which made the audience at the beginning, at the first showing in Jerusalem before the virus came, I was amazed how people understand subtext which exists underneath the text and laugh at the time. Although the film is not a comedy, but the result is very often a combination of amazement, sorrow, and laugh.
Yeah. I mean, we all miss the big screen, and anyway, I mean, nothing like going into a movie theater and for you as a filmmaker, seeing the audience, and then of course interacting with the audience. But this is the life that we have now. Hopefully, things will return to normal. I know you guys are doing much better now with the vaccine in Israel, doing a better job than the United States because we're way behind. And then hopefully in few months, people can get out and see their family and enjoy film and laughter.
But there is a possibility to see the film at home now, which is important to stress. That it's a different kind of showing, but still it's a film which may work, and you feel at home. You feel as if the people on the screen are part of your family, which is also good in a way.
Well, this is great. We've been speaking about your film, The Dead of Jaffa. This is director Ram Loevy, and you can watch the film on linktv.org. I want to thank you, Ram, and hopefully we can talk very soon.
Thank you very much, Jamal.
Wow, that's a great interview, Jamal, with Ram Loevy, filmmaker for the title is The
Dead of Jaffa.
The Dead of Jaffa. I mean, people who have been devoted viewers and listeners of Arab Talk would be surprised at the depth of Palestinian connection to Jaffa still, and some of the ongoing struggles at still ethnic cleansing what remains of Palestinians in Palestine in Jaffa, which is one of the greatest Palestinian cities in historic Palestine.
That's right, Jess. And I urge our viewers to watch it. It's free, and we're relegated to watching films at home. So this is add that to your watch list. So quickly, we have 2 minutes.
Can I just say something in 2 minutes really quick?
Yes.
True to form, the Israeli government, in times of U.S. turmoil between election and inauguration, has launched the largest unprovoked attack on Syria in the last 48 hours. So when America creates these power vacuums between elections and inaugurations, the Israelis never miss an opportunity to commit war crimes, and they're doing it as we speak. It's a story that has not gotten any attention in the U.S.
Unfortunately, this past 2 shows we were unable to focus on these stories because of what's happening in this country. And again, we haven't talked about what's happening with COVID, Jess. People, right. I think the latest numbers now, but we have 10 people who received the dosage of the vaccine. Is that the number?
I don't think it's that high, Jamal. Very few people still are getting the vaccine. The vaccine distribution and inoculation process is still woefully not working and not adequate at this time. In fact,
President-elect Joe Biden, said that he has an ambitious plan to vaccinate 100 million Americans in 100 days. Is this possible?
I'm sorry to say this, Jamal, but it's not possible. Given the infrastructure that we have right now, it's not possible. The only way if it's possible is that if he calls out the National Guard to all 50 states, we have 24/7 mega vaccine centers in every major metropolitan city and in the rural areas, and that my plan is have all major pharmacies, CVS, Walgreens, give out vaccines for free, and then get the National Guard to have these mega centers that operate 24/7. Even under that fantastical plan that I'm recommending, it's unlikely that we can vaccinate 1 million people a day in the first 100 days. It's a great goal. I just don't see it happening. More likely scenario is that you and I will get our vaccines probably probably not till May or June if we're lucky. So
the message is stay safe, wear your mask.
Well, stay safe and wear
social distancing. Don't kind of
Yeah, but Jamal, even if you get
let your guards down.
But even if you get the vaccine, you still got to socially distance. You still got to wear your mask. You still can't party and be crazy.
You've been listening to Arab Talk on KPOO San Francisco, 89.5 FM. Go to our website, arabtalkradio.com, to download the latest episodes. And next time we'll be speaking, Jess, will be after the inauguration. This is when we will have Joe Biden as the new president of the United States.
Okay. We'll see you all then.
See you then.